Yeshivas Nefesh number, paragraph 52. Specifically, when one is going through a period of descent, does a very exalted holiness hover over one to protect him. This is an aspect of a mother hovering over her children, which is the secret of the perfect sukkah, an aspect of the encircling clouds of glory that encircle the Israelites as they travel through the desert, a place of snakes and scorpions. Number 50, paragraph 53, if one should fall from all 10 crowns of holiness and become overpowered by all 10 crowns of unholiness, one can certainly not pray at all. One's prayer is then that of an embittered soul, as in the verse. Her soul was very bitter, and her co-wife provoked her into a rage. That is, even when one wants to strengthen oneself and concentrate on one's prayers, the co-wife, antagonist of prayer, the forces of evil overwhelm what prayer, an aspect of chana provoking it's and confusing the person to the point of one's being unable to pray. But God has mercy on the person and devises plans so that no one is ever lost, providing a person with advice how to draw oneself closer to the truth. One must recite the words of the prayers with sincerity as best as one can, reminding oneself of God, which is the aspect of I am the Lord your God, for God is present everywhere by drawing oneself near to the truth. For the truth is God himself, and one cannot rise up from wherever one has fallen into. As in, I will descend with you to Egypt, and I will surely raise you up from there. This is an aspect of, behold, I am better for you than 10 children. I am alluding to I am the Lord your God. This means that remembering God is better than the 10 children, meaning that even when the 10 crowns of the forces of evil overpower a person, because one has blemished the levels of holiness, I am God is better. I am God is better than all of them, for God is present everywhere and close to all who call upon him in truth. Number 54, chapter 54, the good hidden within every person, wherever it is hidden, must be informed of its name, reminded clearly that its name is an integral part of the holy name of Israel. For as long as one clearly remembers one's name, one can easily be drawn out of wherever one has fallen into. The most crucial forgetting is when good is so hidden that it entirely forgets its greatness. This is the meaning of forgetting one's name. This is why a dead person forgets his name when he had not been a sincerely upright person. The essence of a name is its root. Is its root in the divine name of God, and one must constantly remind oneself that one is called by the name of Israel, and that God takes unique glory from him, no matter one's condition. One who constantly reminds oneself can easily return to God, for the good does not entirely forget its greatness. For the good does not entirely forget its greatness, since it still remembers that it bears the name Israel, and all the worlds were only created for the sake of the Jewish people. Number 55, chapter 55, anyone who contemplates the root and the ultimate purpose, which is the essential truth that God created everything out of nothing, and that everything will ultimately return to be reabsorbed into him with the renewal of the world, will certainly never be influenced by any falsehood, and will be able to return to truth and holiness, which is God, from any evil, impurity, or falsehood. Since wherever one is, one knows that everything is from God, and that God is present everywhere at all times. This is an aspect of, if I rise to heaven, there you are. If I make my bed in hell, even darkness is not dark for you. Therefore there is certainly no darkness, falsehood, evil, or impurity that can distance anyone who believes in this from God is torah and the true tzaddikim, nanach, nachman, meuman, and true students and true students and true students of this generation, which are all one, the ultimate truth. The more that the forces of evil use falsehood and deception to distance one from the truth, the more one can draw closer and closer to the truth. For backslide is for the purpose of advancing. The power of falsehood is rooted in the aspects of the beginning and the ultimate purpose, where everything is part of the one. Silver, gold, tin, lead, all aspects of dust, as in everything came from dust. At least Falsehood can thus overpower by exchanging and falsifying, claiming, for example, that silver is gold. This itself is the main way to subdue and negate falsehood. But the Jewish people perceiving in everything only the beginning and the ultimate purpose, which is God, who is the beginning and end of everything, the ultimate truth. Falsehood falls and is erased from the world, and we merit descending the ultimate, and we merit descending the ultimate descent. Number 56, there are two types of holy clarifications. The first type is the great clarifications and awesome rectifications that we possessors of free choice make through all the mitzvahs and good deeds that we do with our arousal from below. The second is the wondrous and awesome rectifications made every moment by God Himself with an arousal from above. God Himself is involved in rectifying and perfecting all the worlds, and both clarifications are actually one. For the arousal from below spurs an arousal from above, and our so powerful arousal from below is only through God Himself, although it is impossible for us at this time to grasp and understand this completely. This is the secret of the paradox of divine knowledge and free choice, which are actually one and the same. But since it is impossible for us to grasp and understand this itself allows for the power of free choice. Therefore one who follows the path of simplicity will never falter. As written, one who follows simplicity walks securely. For through simplicity and faith, one fulfills the entire Torah properly, with all its details and specifications. For one believes that the rectification of all worlds is dependent only on us. In other words, by fulfilling all the mitzvahs in all their details, with our arousal from below, while never despairing when one stumbles in some sin, but strengthens oneself to repent, knowing that there is the clarification from above, an aspect of arousal from above, where no blemish can ever reach, as in, if you have sinned, how have you affected Him, and where everything can be rectified and all sins transformed into merits, for God's thoughts are very deep and great rectifications can be extracted from all damages. One can stay steadfast in one's service of God whatever the circumstances, all downfalls and distancing from God stand from the confusion. Concerning the two above mentioned aspect of clarification, some people don't even begin serving God, or do even worse. This is rooted in the desire of the evil inclination to place knowledge over free choice, as if a human being has no free choice, but that everything is dependent on God's knowledge, and that God has no interest in man's service. This is an aspect of the false beliefs of the heretics and real sinners, who have totally cast off the yoke of holiness. But even the evil inclination of lustful people who commit sins without sophisticated arguments also stems from this aspect. For the core of the evil inclination stems from here. See, there are others on the opposite side of the spectrum who began, however, minimally, serving God, only to then fall away from this small degree of service, causing them to become very discouraged. There are also many who despaired entirely of serving God after seeing how they were unsuccessful and maintaining their repeated inspirations to serve God, blah, 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 blah. As many young people have experienced this evil inclination is the opposite of the previous one, and also feeds from the same above pitfalls, but wants to raise free choice above God's knowledge, as if everything is dependent on man alone without God at all. Thus the conclusion is, if one has fallen and damaged, there is no more hope. But one who follows the path of simplicity believes that certainly everything is dependent on us, and though everything is from God, nonetheless everything is dependent on us. Although it is impossible to understand this, such a person will never become distanced from God, and will never be discouraged. But one who follows the path of simplicity believes that certainly everything is dependent on us, and though everything is from God, nonetheless everything is dependent on us. Although it is impossible to understand this, such a person will never become distanced from God and will never be discouraged. Certainly one must serve God with all one's strength, for everything is dependent on us, for God gave the earth to man. But nevertheless, there's absolutely no cause in the world to give up hope or despair, for God is always perfecting, and He will ultimately perfect everything according to His will. For you are exalted forever, O God, and God's plan will prevail, and every good deed that a person does is never lost. Every good deed has its full effect, even though one does not see any good results. This is impossible to understand, as the sages said regarding two mitzvahs, for which the Torah promises long life: the sending away of a mother bird and honoring one's parents. A father told his son to send away the mother bird, and as the son climbed to the tree to do so, he fell to his death. Where is the promised long life? Our sages asked. In the world to come, they answered. Similarly, there are several mitzvahs in the Torah that are presented as having the power to protect one from sin and draw one near to God, such as wearing tzitzis and tefillin. Yet there are those who wear tzitzis and tefillin and nevertheless fall prey to the evil inclination. What should such a person do? Stop fulfilling the commandments of tzitzis and tefillin altogether? However, all the words of the Holy Torah and those of our sages are true and enduring, but some things are beyond our understanding. Certainly the power of the commandment of tzitzis is very great and can save a person from the lust of the evil inclination, as brought in the Talmud of the man whose tzitzis slapped him in the face as he was about to sin. But all people are menachas 44a, but all people are different, and some have been so drawn after the evil inclination that it is difficult for them to resist it, even if they wear tzitzis. But specifically, such people should be especially careful to wear tzitzis and fulfill all the mitzvahs, for if nothing else, one will at least have the merit of fulfilling the mitzvah of tzitzis and other mitzvahs and not be entirely lost. But in most cases, the merit of the mitzvah of tzitzis and other good points one possesses will join together until one merits overcoming one's evil inclination entirely, and no matter what, no good deed is ever lost, regardless of what happens afterwards. There are many aspects to this as well, and many issues unknown to men, but it is all for the sake of the power of free will in some each individual. No matter whom is responsible to do one's part and devote time to serving God throughout one's life, and even if one does not merit perfect holiness and purity, no good intention is ever lost. So even if one sees in some book that a particular mitzvah or service has the power to bring one to a certain level, and one is roused by this to fulfill that mitzvah, yet one sees that one has not attained that level, one should not be discouraged by this at all, for who can know the ways of God? Perhaps God has elevated one's mitzvah or service in order to make an even higher and more wondrous rectification. God's thoughts are very deep, and it is forbidden to doubt God or the words of the Torah and the sages. Chapter 57. When one falls to very low levels, aspects of the filthy places where it is impossible to receive vitality directly from a revelation of God's holiness, for the sake of which the world was created. Since regarding such places, the verse says, I will not give my glory to another. The vitality of these places coming only from the concealment of the hidden word, which is an aspect of where is the place of His glory. Yet one has mercy on oneself, seeing one's great distance from God's glory. And then these places cannot even be called places at all. For the essence of a place is determined by the presence of holiness, and the revelation of the glory of God, who is referred to as the place, as we call Him, the place of the world. But these filthy places are not called places at all, as in our tables are filled with vomit and excrement with no place. And until there is no place, one indeed has no place at all. One then wanders about the earth, for by sinning one becomes distant from God's glory, as if one reverts the world to chaos and utterly destroys it. But when one merits at least knowing the truth and recognizing one's great blemish and damage in destroying the world and leaving himself with no place. Yet one searches and asks, where is the place of his glory? For certainly, even in those places, there must be some vitality from God. Only that it is very hidden, an aspect of where is the place of his glory. One ascends, the ultimate ascent, to an aspect of the holiness of the above-mentioned hidden word, an aspect of ayeh, where, an aspect of beyond space. Hence, from one's descent of having fallen to such a low level, an aspect of being below place, a state of chaos where one has no place at all. One ascends a great ascent by virtue of searching and asking, to an aspect of being above space, where all one's sins are forgiven. All forgiveness of sins comes from this aspect of ayeh, as in, for with you is forgiveness with you. For ayeh is an aspect of the crown, of the 13 rectifications of the beard, which are the root of the 13 attributes of mercy, the ultimate source of pardon and forgiveness. This is an aspect of, if your sins are as red as toilah, like crimson, they will become white as wool. For these filthy places are aspects of the klipa, a shell and evil force, of a tilas worm, which is very hard and strong, rising up every day to destroy the world completely. All types of crawling creatures that are strictly forbidden to eat come from this klipa, since they are so distant from God's glory. As in, I will not give my glory to another, however, by asking and screaming for God's glory. Even from such places, one ascends to the highest levels, drawing down forgiveness and pardon from the aspect of the 13 rectifications of the beard, which are an aspect of wool. Hence, if your sins are as red as crimson, they will become as white as wool. For this reason our sages said that worms formed in fruits after they were gathered from the tree are not forbidden to eat, unless they had separated from the fruit, alluding that whoever falls into the above-mentioned places and sees that he has no place within the realm of holiness, why must most importantly not abandon one's place or despair and separate oneself from the realm of holiness. Many people did in fact despair and separate themselves entirely from holiness upon seeing the great depth of their fall, wanting to establish for themselves a place outside of holiness, and wanting to spread themselves out like crawling creatures upon the earth, living by the dictum, I am going to enjoy myself in this world, assuming that they anyway had no portion in the future world, assuming that they anyway had no portion in the future life. Such crawling creatures are certainly impure and entirely forbidden, as the verse says, crawling creatures that crawl on the earth. For the earth is the main domain of the serpent and impurity, but the human worm, who has fallen into an aspect of the filthy places, yet holds fast to his place and does not completely separate himself to the outside, knows the truth that there is anyway no place to escape and hide from God. As the verse says, where can I flee from you? Even if I descend to heaven, even if I ascend to heaven. And what would one gain by continuing to pursue one's lust, since one will suffer bitterly in the end, and any degree to which one saves oneself from the forces of evil, even to a hair's breadth, will certainly be a great comfort, as if one had found abundant spoils. When one reflects on all this, the more one realizes one's distance from God's glory, the more one realizes that one has no place at all, for all the places that are distant from God's glory cannot be called places at all. Therefore one seeks and searches and asks for God's glory even from there, as in, where is the place of his glory, which is an aspect of, from there you will seek the Lord your God. From there, implying that at least one has not detached oneself and separated entirely. On the contrary, one does not leave one's places, and if an overpowering wind rises against you, don't leave your place. In this way, one can merit that the backslide will be transformed to a great advancement, and one will rise to an aspect of beyond space, and that the aspect of the last worm will be transformed into an aspect of holiest, the daily burnt offering, which atones for both the sins of the day and the night, subduing and eradicating the impurity of this worm, which is an aspect of the worms and fruit that are permitted to eat unless they become separated from the fruit, for as long as one has not separated oneself entirely to crawl on the earth and make a place for oneself in the domain of the forces of evil, but on the contrary, searches for God from wherever one is, then one's descent can be transformed into a great ascent. Number 58, some souls are very fragile like eggs, and the forces of evil, the klipa of Amalek, attack these souls more than others. As the verse says, he struck all the stragglers amongst you. The true tzaddikim, nanach, nachman, meuman of every generation, work to rectify even these souls. And the long process of their being rectified is the cause of the great prolongation of the exile. When these souls merit coming to the true tzaddikim, nanach, nachman, meuman, and begin their rectification, they inevitably must endure great toil, suffering, and bitterness. They inevitably must endure great toil, suffering, and bitterness, physically, spiritually, and financially, in many different ways. The main purification of these souls is to greatly strengthen their resolve and never despair, rather always a yearning for salvation. As the verse says, I yearn for you every day. I yearn for you every day. Actually, no one can attain the desired good other than through pain, suffering, and great bitterness, which is an aspect of mourning intensely over the destruction of the temple, the main intent of which concerns our being so distant in our exile from our Father in heaven. But every individual must mourn deeply over one's own soul that is so far from its Father in heaven, and that evil overwhelms one ever more strongly, though this can be caused to err and say, my strength and hope is in God is lost. One must strengthen oneself, and one must strengthen and comfort oneself greatly at all times, and be among the prisoners of hope, of whom the verse says, return to the fortress, O prisoners of hope. They are called prisoners because one should bind and tie oneself tightly to hope, never abandoning hope. For God's kindnesses are endless. His kindnesses are renewed every morning, and therefore it is good to hope silently for God's salvation. Anyone wanting to truly draw near to holiness must endure endless. Anyone wanting to truly draw near to holiness must endure endless, great bitterness. And the main thing is to remain firm in the holy yearning. This is alluded to in our sages, stating that non-kosher eggs can be ascertained as such if their tips are either both flat or both sharp. When some pain or suffering befalls the wicked or those far from the truth, they do not comfort themselves at all, nor hope to get out of the situation. As the verse says, he does not believe that he will return from the darkness. Rather, they remain sunken in worry and great depression, and despair of God entirely. And sometimes the opposite happens when they experience some good, such as good food or drink. Then they fill their mouths with frivolity and make all their days into festivals, ignoring what will happen to them in the end. This is an aspect of both ends of an egg being flat, alluding to their sadness and mourning, or both ends being sharp, alluding to their frivolity and joyfulness, as if joy can only be found in this world. Regarding such joy, the verse says, as for joy, what does it do? Upright people, though, are an aspect of an egg with one end flat and one end sharp. For pain and suffering is bound for them together with hope and consolation. For they are prisoners of hope, and know that it is impossible to reach the goal of their good hope without suffering. Thus in times of suffering, They strengthen and encourage themselves with hope, and in this way they truly attain a good end. However, even if one end of an egg is flat and the other is sharp, this alone is not sufficient basis to permit eating it. Sometimes we find that even the wicked will suffer great pain and bitterness for the sake of their hope of thus attaining some worldly pleasure, such as wealth, honor, or the like. Thus they comfort themselves from their suffering with the thought that this will bring them closer to some earthly pleasure. Such pain and hope is certainly not good, since it is all for the sake of earthly pleasure. Thus, even if one end is flat and the other is sharp, one must not eat the egg until one knows that it is from a permitted species, alluding that the pain and hope are for the sake of the eternal purpose. Number 59, regarding the importance of encouraging oneself to always begin anew in the service of God. Yotzar Yira, Yirav Avoida 55, Bushav Azis 3. Chapter 60, the confusions of anyone who wants to have all his pleasures, yet wants to know and understand everything with one's gross intellect, always filled with questions about God and the tzaddikim, nach meuman, or even against oneself, which is also not good, for this also comes from the forces of evil that weaken one's confidence with questions like, how can you want to pray with intention and enthusiasm after you did such and such just an hour ago? All stem from this filth, or from the filth of the snake that confuses the human mind that wants to understand everything. The truth is that we know nothing, as even King Solomon said, I am a boor without human understanding. And as the Psalms say, I am a boor and know nothing like beasts. I am with you. This is all the more so with simple people like us, especially in these generations. In some, man knows nothing and must continuously begin anew to serve God. Doing all that is in one's power, then one will always have it good, and eventually one will reach the ultimate good and eternal purpose in this world and the next. Chapter 61, all the temptations and challenges that the evil inclination and his forces bring upon a person every day and at all times, all stem from the klippas of Lavan. Of Lavan, Esav Egypt, and the 4 kingdoms that all rise in every generation against every Jew to destroy him. The only way to save oneself from them is by having complete faith in God, which is an aspect of holy renewal, an aspect of renewed every day, every morning, renewed every morning. Great is your faith. This means that one should know the ultimate truth, that one knows absolutely nothing at all. One must simply strengthen oneself in the holy faith we received from our forefathers and holy sages, not allowing anything in the world to confuse one, for we know nothing at all besides what our sages taught us, as they stated both sides of the coin, and they stated both sides of the coin. On the one hand, one must utterly break all lusts and even flee the utmost distance from the smallest movement that is not in accord with the will of God, for it severely damages the Jewish soul and all the world's dependence on it. On the other hand, if one has transgressed, even if one transgressed the entire Torah thousands of times, one must never despair, but must begin anew at all times, strengthening oneself in the service of God. Not only does God derive delight and pleasure from the very worst people, but his primary greatness is manifested when those furthest from him draw near and acknowledge him, strengthening themselves in faith, thanking and praising him for his daily kindness and constant wonders. The heavens and the earth were only created for this purpose, that a human being begin every day anew, and if one were born this very day, as if today is one's first moment and aspect of in the beginning God created. In the beginning, for the sake of the beginning and his goodness, God himself renews the work of the creation every day, every moment. All this is for the sake of renewal, so that each and every individual, according to his level, begins anew every day to enter the service of God. This is an aspect of the commandments, to bring the first fruits and the confession recited over them. Chapter 62, every day God sends new salvations to save a person. Oh, to save a person from the forces of evil that rise up. That rise up. From the evil forces that rise up against one. Every day God sends no salvation to save a person from the forces of evil that rise up against one every day. This is an aspect of proclaiming salvations from day to day. Similarly, in this monastic prayer, we say, for your miracles that are with us each day, and our sages said, one's evil inclination rises up against one each and every day, and if not for God's helping him, thus every day one is granted entirely new experiences, and God helps and saves one every day, so one should not confuse oneself at all from one day to the next, for who knows how great will be the new salvation God will send one today, if one merits to begin anew. Chapter 63, one must be very stubborn in serving God. Morai kubu sheli l'redes eilecho tzalmidim ayukam yagilchu kineneisim yoyel v'avo yisecho v'lecho mal mafaret limis v'shiyachukim zavim advo yisecho never nach nachma meuman segal l'chsodim u'levegudim mikavle kavle tzar v'tzarikei zchavodit im naim sim zam tam zyoymi she'en chum savu v'avavam